Are you concerned about all this corruption being rebranded as conspiracy theory? Well, don't you worry. Sit back and relax and join in the conversation with today's guest. Welcome to another LSB Film Productions podcast with your host, Chris Brooks.
Hello, welcome to the Never Settle podcast. Oh, no, we're not. No, we're not. welcome to LSB Film Productions. I hope you're well. It's me, Chris Brooks, your host for today. Today, my guest is Mel Clarke. Now, Mel Clarke is an upcoming podcaster, YouTube. What do we call ourselves?
Extraordinaire.
Extraordinaire, yeah. And Mel's actually putting her money where her mouth is. Mel has been tackling council tax. Now, I know this is such a hot topic. We have to wear special gloves. And so we're going to talk about the journey that Mel's had to go through with the courts. And it's very interesting. It's very enlightening. And we're also going to, of course, talk about the Never Settle podcast. So without further ado, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Chris. It's an absolute honor to be on your channel. I know you have amazing guests, and I am now included in that. So thank you.
You are indeed. And thank you for joining me. It's lovely to see you again. And thank you for my time on yours. I think it was fairly well received. There was a few fart heads, but
yeah, always is.
We expect that.
Always is. Yeah, it's still climbing, Chris. It's still climbing.
It is. Yeah, that's good. Brilliant stuff. So let's talk about you. What made you think, you know what? Why am I paying this? What was the bit that made you snap?
Okay. So for me, if we sort of go back a little bit further, I have always been a bit of a what? And
rebel.
Yeah, and always like not really wanted to toe the party line for whatever that might have looked like. And so a few years ago, I got myself into some hot bother. I basically got into property and did it all with very little money. And then did really, really well. And then the economic crash happened. And I found myself with a lot of debt, and out of a job, and that it was spiraling. And so I ended up going into a debt management program just to help things out at the time. And I got introduced to this company called Cartel Client Review. And they also had a debt management part of it, which is how it all came about. But the Cartel Client Review, this was a
What
guy.
name, Cartel.
I know. Well, the guy that started it was a guy called Carl Wright.
Okay.
And he basically was saying that all mortgages and loans and finance agreements are fraud. And come to us, pay us a handsome fee, and we will get your contracts voided. And so I thought, well, that sounds like a bloody good idea. And I actually became a rep for that company as well. But it wasn't too long before the SRA, which is the Solicitors Regulation Authority, because they had their own solicitors on a floor in the building, and the FCA, the wonderful FCA, basically froze all of his assets, screwed him over, told us all he was a con artist. And I didn't know anything better really back then, and I thought, oh, he's a con artist. When I look back now, I think no, he just got screwed over by the establishment. So that was kind of my baptism of fire, really, and I ended up in some hot water with a car finance agreement and various other things. Ended up in court for that. Ended up getting an order. I can't remember what the actual order is called, but I had to pay £9.50 a month towards. So basically, they took my car, and it's BMW. This was BMW finance, very, very aggressive. They took my car.
Was this just for missing payments?
Yeah. So basically, I'd started to default.
Right,
things were struggling and all that, and so they took my car, and then when they took me to court, they basically were able to secure me to pay the full finance agreement, even though I'd only had the car for a third of the term or whatever it was. So absolutely aggressive bastards. But whatever this court order thing was, it was £9.50 a month. So I then ended up in court. I can't remember the years now, but for HSBC as well. And again, I didn't know any different, and I ended up having a charging order put against my mortgage, because I stupidly said oh yeah, these transactions are mine. Because the solicitor that was representing HSBC, he was like 12 and he was waffling on and the judge or whoever it was basically went, shh, because he could see me like looking at this paperwork and he knew that this guy was probably going to talk himself out of a win. So of course, remember, Miss Clarke, you are under oath. And I'm like, so
So are
yeah.
you, Judge? So are
Yeah,
you.
exactly. This was quite a few years ago. So anyway, so that was kind of me sort of dabbling around and getting more aware of the corruption and everything else. But I've always said, and I know a lot of people will resonate with this. I haven't got that brain, like reading through all this legalese crap and trying to understand the law and this, that, and the other. And so I just looked at the headlines and I dabbled a bit and I never really got well versed in it. That sort of happened. So in 2020, like lots of us, the cap was blown wide off.
Mm.
I had more rabbit holes that I went down than I care to admit to. And
But at least we had the time to do it.
yes, we did. Yes. So I basically started to write to Coventry Council and to say, where's my money being spent? I believe it could be terrorism, and things like that. And of course, they send you like a very brief reply, which quotes the 1992 Local Government Act, which tells you, right?
Mm.
So that went on for a bit, and then I followed the Stacey Wilkinson methodology of claiming your direct debit, and so I did. I got some direct debit reclaimed back on my council tax, and that took me over a certain threshold in terms of what they believe I owed them. So it sort of went quiet for a while, and then in 2023, I think it was. I started to get some letters and it all started to escalate a bit more. The upshot was I started to take these letters seriously when I saw, what's this? Bankruptcy petition? What the frick? And um, and so I started to engage with these solicitors that were writing to me. And I was like, what? And they said, well, you were issued a statutory demand, which you failed to respond to. Therefore, we have every right to make you bankrupt or apply for the petition anyway. So then that started a whole merry dance with all of that. And long story short, I guess, I ended up in court for the first time May last year, 2024. Took a lot of support with me because I think it was about 2 weeks prior to that, I'd ended up in Sherwood Forest, as you do, meeting Robin Hood and the Merry Men. But basically, it was the peace officers,
Oh, really? Okay,
yeah, doing a swearing in ceremony for the
cool.
sheriffs, etc. I had no idea what was going on, but I'd been recommended by Robbie the Ratcatcher to attend because I would meet like-minded people. I basically reached out to Robbie via Richard Vobes. I'd emailed Richard Vobes to say, Robbie's been on your thing talking about promissory notes. I really need to speak to him. And Richard kindly shared his details, and that's how me and Robbie started talking.
Okay,
And that's how I ended up in Sherwood Forest. And I did follow Robbie's promissory note thing protocol, which clearly didn't get acknowledged, nothing returned, nothing refused, no note of dishonor, and all the rest of it. But I've learned the hard way basically. So when I was at Sherwood Forest, I met a couple of people from Coventry, which is where I'm from, and they were like, "Oh, you should come on a Tuesday night. This great guy called Mick runs the Sovereign Project." And this is all about. Sorry, I've got a delivery van just turned up. This is all about the stuff that hopefully I'll just leave it in the porch. This is all about this sort of stuff, and you'll get loads of support, this, that, and the other. And I was like, no, I do music on a Tuesday. I'm not sure I want to get into this. But I was out on a limb. I was dealing with all of this on my own, and I've got this bankruptcy petition. So fast forward, met these guys, met Mick. Mick was absolutely wonderful. Some of your viewers will know him, Mick Butler. He's been on Vobesy, he's been on mine. He's now my partner.
cool.
And so we went to court. There was probably about 10, 11 of us. And I don't think we dealt with it in the right way, because we were basically demanding that the judge give us his full name. They'd put us in a tiny, tiny room. So they said, you can't come in, there's not enough room. And we were like, we demand transparency and all that sort of stuff. And then it was, what's the judge's full name? He refused to give it. This is through the wall, of an usher going in and coming out. Then it was like, is the judge on his bond today, on his oath today? Sorry. He refused to answer that. And then at some point, the door had been opened and my guy that was helping me went through. He shouldn't have done this. No, first of all, sorry, he went in to talk to the judge, which he was allowed to do.
Mm.
But then everybody followed him. So it just turned into a bit of a shit show. And um, security was called. And needless to say, we were all kicked out. And then it was transferred. It was transferred a few weeks later to Birmingham County Court. That was August the 14th last year, and I went with a lot less supporters. Um, and basically, we went with some evidence that we wanted filing into the court before the hearing started. And we felt like due process was not being followed. We were being obstructed.
Hmm.
So my different representative this time went into the courtroom without me to basically say, Judge, we want this recording properly, we want this being looked at. And I wasn't in there, so I don't know what was said, but basically the judge would, the message we were getting was just come in
You
and
was told.
the judge is there to help and answer any questions. And we were like, not feeling that this is going to be the case. Um, so so basically he went in once, came back out, went back in again, and on the second time he came out, he shouted through the door, Judge, you are obstructing due process. And at that point, one of the security guards that called for backup, this security guard was very strange and completely overreacted. Before we knew it, there was about 6 or 8 security guards grabbed my guy, manhandled him, dragged him out into the lift foyer, and basically assaulted him. And one of them tried to punch him in the head a couple of times, but my guy managed to sort of duck down and yeah, and they basically threw him out, and then they threw another one of my supporters out. I could not believe what I was witnessing. It was like,
Surely
we
that's assault.
yes, and we are in a building that's supposed to be about justice, and this is actually the court staff that are assaulting somebody that didn't show any aggression, or there was just no reason for it. And it really did quite get to me. It
Mm.
was quite
Shocking.
shocking, yeah. So when they'd been ejected, there was me and a couple of others left, and the usher came out. And I was like, I can't believe what I've just witnessed. And she said, none of that needed to happen. All you needed to do was come in and speak to the judge. He's there to help. And I said, I wish I had your faith. And she just sort of went, hmm. And
Do you know
I
what?
said,
If she said it like you just said it, she almost sounds like autonomous.
yeah,
It's like you're
yeah,
just a program.
just yeah, exactly. And so and she said something about going back in. I said, look, I will go in if the judge will agree to take this evidence, which was now a piece of crumpled paper after going through what we'd gone
Mm.
through. Because when I'd gone out to the lift lobby, I'd quickly got my phone out to try and record. And at that point, the one of the security guards turned on me and said, "You can't record in here." And I said, "This is assault." And he's like lunging at me and grabbing my arm and trying to get the phone off me. Um, so yeah, and I said, blah blah blah. And so she said, "Okay, I will go and speak to the judge." And she came back out and she said, "The judge has concluded proceedings." And I said, "It's 11:25." I said, "This has been allocated an hour." And she said, "Well, it did start at 11 and you didn't come in." And I went, "You know why I didn't come in. You've just witnessed what I've witnessed." And she said, I said, well, did he carry on without me or has he adjourned it? And she said, I don't know. I said, well, can you go and ask, please? So she went, okay. So she went off, came back. She goes, you'll have to wait for the judge's order. I said, what? She said, she goes, yeah, that's what you have to do. And I'm like, so then we spent another 45 minutes in there trying to get some more information, being given the runaround. And I'm so annoyed that I didn't request the CCTV footage because the guy that was there and got assaulted, he wasn't interested in pressing charges or going to the police or anything like that for his own reasons. Um,
Probably
and
just to stay out of the radar.
stay off the radar, yeah. And I was too green at that point to really,
Mm.
and I was in shock. I
Mm.
remember when we all went to the pub next door afterwards, and I literally just burst into tears because I couldn't believe what I'd just seen.
Have you still got the footage?
Yeah, but it's like a few seconds long. It's pretty blurred, and yeah, I still have
That's a
some.
shame because that would probably get you so many views.
I know. I
People
wish.
love that shit.
I wish I'd pulled my phone out earlier.
Mm.
But you do what you do.
Yeah,
So
I've seen it.
so yeah, so then it was a waiting game, and then I think it was 3 weeks later I got the judge's order come through to tell me he'd issued bankruptcy, and I was just like, you have got to be taking the fucking piss. Um, so yeah, since then basically I think I've been to court now 6 times all in all. So we went to appeal in Birmingham. We had this judge who basically came in all guns blazing. So Mick, who is now my partner, was there to be my Mackenzie friend. Um, and the judge just came in all guns blazing, basically saying, "This is how it's going to be. I don't want it. I don't want any crap. Don't want any of this freeman of the land shit.
I was
Pseudo
going to say
law."
you didn't do any of that, did you? There wasn't any freeman of the lands that when you went to court.
No,
That wasn't your argument, was it? It was purely
no,
where is the money going? Mm.
yeah, and but obviously we were sort of, Melanie of the, family, whatever. But so yeah, he was really hostile, and we were like, whoa. And so Mick basically said a couple of things. He went, "Oi, you pipe down, da, da, ba, da," all that sort of thing. And he says, if you speak again, you'll be out. Anyway, so he starts talking to me, and then Mick whispered something to me, and he went, "That's it, out." So Mick got
Was he on
thrown.
his period? Was he one of those type? Was he one of those men?
Yeah, yeah. So he got thrown out, and then after that, the judge started to calm a little bit, and I just said, "I've been really taken back by your hostility, judge." And he then basically eventually apologized, and because he was obviously aware of the past, what had gone on and what had gone on in Coventry and this, that, and the other. So, and then to be fair to him, we were in there a good hour, and he adjourned it. And he was basically teaching me or trying to educate me in terms of how I needed to present my stuff. So, because what he'd got was last minute stuff from me, last minute stuff from them. And he was saying, I haven't had enough time to properly look at this. This is how I want it to be presented, etc.,
Hmm.
etc. So, so I was like, I breathe, I can get myself organized a bit better. And he basically said he would like to do the next hearing. Did I agree? And so I had my other guy with me who was there for social care. And we sort of had a little whisper. And I said, look, is this better the devil you know? Because this guy, even though he came in all guns blazing and he's obviously a little bit tainted, at least he's apologized and he's actually been very good in terms of trying to explain things to me, etc., etc. And he agreed with me. So we said no, because he said, if you think it's going to be unfair or biased, I understand. And I said, "Do you know what? No, it's fine, right?" Then a few weeks later, I got something through which basically said he'd recused himself. So he took himself out of the game anyway. So then the next hearing, well, just before that hearing, I'd gone to another hearing where I'd put in an application to try to get an injunction to stop the bankruptcy people, the trustees, the insolvency, to stop them putting charges on my properties. And I got a circuit judge in there, and we were in there a good 2 hours. And she basically, again, she seemed very fair. She was an older lady. I got upset when I was recalling what happened in Birmingham. Um, and her whole point really was, it's clear to me, that this whole thing is very traumatized for you. I think you need to perhaps look at who you take your advice from in future. None of us like paying our taxes, but it's one of those things. And I'm thinking, yeah, yeah, okay. And I'm not disagreeing with her because I'm thinking,
You just want to go home now.
yeah. And so in the end, she did not grant me the injunction. She said, and what she did say to me was, you've got a strong case of getting this dismissed or getting it set aside because they didn't follow due process for the stat demand. Um, and you've had it confirmed in writing from Coventry Magistrates Court that there was no court order in your name, which she'd seen. She'd seen
and,
the
and and this is because councils don't use real courts.
exactly.
They hire a judge who I don't even know is a judge, but it's not a legal or lawful procedure. It's
Yeah,
a play, it's a pantomime.
exactly. And when you speak to the magistrates court and say, do I have any court orders in my name?
Mm.
No. Are you sure? Yes. The only one I can see is 2021 for a speeding fine. Yeah, I remember that. And I contested that, but they ignored me. Okay, fine. So there's nothing else. No, there's nothing else. What about, and then I said, probably said something like court liability. Oh, liability orders, you have to go to the council.
Mm.
And then you speak to the council and they say the magistrates court have issued it. Well, we know damn well they haven't. We know damn well that the council are issuing their own liability orders
From
or
the council,
no
yeah, they're printing off
notice
their own printers.
exactly off their own software.
Mm.
So we know it's all a load of big scam.
Which to me has to be fraudulent. That in itself has to be, surely that has to be a criminal act.
Well,
You're
that it
pretending to be
is.
someone you're not.
It is. There needs to be a separation of powers. There needs to be somebody that's overseeing the council, so they're not just running their own show and issuing whatever they want and their own paperwork and all. And the bit of crucial evidence I was trying to get into the court was the proof that in 2003, the 1st of October, liability orders or the Form A that was used to process to issue a liability order in court had been removed from law and it's never been replaced.
Mm.
So there is no official legal lawful way to issue a liability order, and that's been since 2003, and that was confirmed by Sean Jones from the Ministry of Justice um, in a Freedom of Information request, and I think it was as recent as 2023, and then another Freedom of Information request was put in to ask whether legal staff have been informed of this, and she basically said that yes, all legal staff were reminded of this in 2023. And I think there's something in that freedom of information request that basically says, but we can't monitor who's reading it, taking notice, etc., etc. But it was issued to everybody in 2023. So they can't plead ignorance. They can't say they didn't know. They can't say I'm
Have you
just doing my job, you know?
no? Have you tried a subject access request?
At the council.
Mm.
Yeah.
Which is different, isn't it? It's not the same as a
Yeah, that's
freedom
that
request.
that's the
It's the
personal stuff.
documentation one.
Yeah. Yes, I have. I probably need to do another one. I think that was quite some time ago. Because the bit I've missed out, so I issued a promissory note back in the first one was 2021, I think. Then I issued another one in early 2024. Then I met somebody else who piped up on one of my podcasts and basically said he'd got success with having promissory notes taken. So got in touch with him. He runs his own academy and started to take advice and legal knowledge from him. We we reissued a promissory note. This was before the August 14th court date, but we sent it to the receiving bank of, no, I'm not, I'm getting confused. Sorry, scrap that. That was something different.
Just press
Um,
rewind.
but my understanding is if you send a promissory note with the right certificate of service, with all of the compliance, which is, the banks need to be complying with Basel 4 now, but most of them don't. And in fact, I don't think any of them do. And various other compliance regulations, you send that promissory note to the receiving bank of the institution that you want to settle. So let's say Cov Council use, I don't know, Barclays Bank to receive in their funds, then that's where the note goes to, obviously with all the relevant account details on, etc. And it's the bank's duty, regulated by compliance, to do what they're supposed to do. And if they but they don't, right? So they ignore it, they don't return it, they don't refuse it, etc., etc. Um, so I'd issued a couple of promissory notes which completely got ignored, and then had the injunction thing. She refused, and she said, "You've got grounds to have this annulled." And she didn't say you will get it annulled, but she then went on to say, "But rest assured, Miss Clarke, they'll come back after you. Even if you get it set aside this time, they want their money.
Mm.
So I would recommend to you that you just pay your council tax."
Fear. So no, it's quite funny because I do remember a story a few years ago now where a bloke actually managed to get all his council tax from predated paid back into his account, which you would think, oh, that's a fantastic win, loads of money. But then they just added that onto the bill next year.
Yes,
So they're crafty little bastards.
that's exactly what happened with me. And once you go over 5,000, um, then they've got a remedy for them is applying for bankruptcy. And I think the reason why they went straight to bankruptcy for me is because it was over two properties as well. I've got a rental property which used to be a student property, and student properties are exempt from tax, and now it's not. And so of course they're hot on it, aren't they? And
I'm a
I'm like,
mosque
yeah. And
or a
I'm
place of
yeah, I
worship.
know, yeah, yeah. If it was a religious, yeah, maybe I'm going to start running church workshops in there and praising, because you can actually get exempt, can't you?
You
From
can, but the whole property has to be, not just one room.
right,
People thought, oh, if you dedicate one room as like a worship area, you don't have to pay council tax, but you do, unless the whole building is dedicated to worship. Then
right.
you still have to pay council. Well, we say you have to pay council tax. No, you don't.
Exactly, but yeah. So where did I get up to? Yeah. So basically, I was back in court then in February, and having taken advice through a different route. So this is important to say, right? So when I put my first appeal notice form in, which was back in as soon as I got the bankruptcy order, so it was early September or middle of September, I was following a certain way of thinking, taking advice from a couple of people. And so that's very much reflected on what I put on this form. Since then, I'd changed tacks, I'd followed other people, I'd learned more, I'd done this, I'd done that. Because obviously there's different people teaching different ways. And it's really hard to know which way to go. And it's really hard to know what's going to work for you. But ultimately, I think what I've come to the conclusion of, and most people do, is you have to, A, fully believe that you're sovereign. Never mind, yeah, well, I know this sovereign thing's a
No,
thing, and, and
you've got to say it with conviction.
you've got to fully believe it. And I think for all of those times I was in court feeling a bit scared, not fully believing, not fully comprehending what it's all about.
Or just
Um,
having that element of doubt. That's
yeah,
all it takes.
yeah. And they come in with this authority,
Mm.
and you feel like,
Like a little
because
school kid.
Yeah, and they're talking legalese and this, yeah, exactly. And it's just like,
And this is why I say it does take so much courage. And I raise, anyone who's doing this, I salute you, because it is so much. You need balls the size of fucking boulders, because
yeah,
it is scary.
it was if I had my time again, would I have done what I did? Because I sort of went into it a bit blind and I ended up in some hot water and then I had no choice. I basically had no choice because I've got assets. The fuckers are coming after me. I'm going to protect my home and anything else that they want. What's that?
I've got this lady on tomorrow, recording tomorrow, and she's just written this book, and it's Protect What's Yours, and it's all about trusts and stuff and how
It's
to
not
go
Trina,
about
is
it.
it?
No, it's Josephine Wallow.
Josephine Wallow. Okay.
I'll pass you her details because she'd be a good guest for you to get on.
Yeah, yeah,
So
brilliant.
yeah, there you go. God,
Yeah, so
gift
thank you.
keeps on giving.
So yeah, so I was just basically I was in hot water and I needed to sink or swim. And it's amazing when where the journey takes you. And I had to surrender a lot and I had to just be open, and all of that sort of thing. So February comes. We're in and we're with a very, very experienced district judge. Um, he's been in the game since the early 90s. He's probably seen and heard it all. And he came in very authoritarian. This is how it's going to be. No talking over me. This, that, and the other. And the guy I'd got with me, I was surprised, because when the judge asked, "How would you like me to address you?" he said, "However you want, Your Honor," or "However you want, Judge." And I was like, That's not how this goes." If he's giving you the courtesy of asking, at least give him your appropriate title, which isn't Mister. Anyway, so that was that. And the guy that had been helping me, there was a lot of last minute dot coms. He was going to try and take it and escalate it to High Court, because this was a trust matter, because I do have a trust, by the way, private trust. And so really, do you have the expertise in this room to be dealing with trust? And this judge wasn't having a bar of it. So he said, right, he said, "You've been in court now 5 times. This is a massive drain on court resources." And I'm sitting there thinking, yeah,
They're
you're
not even a
fucking
real
right.
court.
Yeah, you're fucking right it is. Do you think I want to be doing this? Everybody's had the evidence from May the 30th of the fact that stat demand wasn't issued and there was no court order. Why are we here? Um, he said, "So I am basically, my intention today is to get this resolved one way or the other." I'm like, okay. So we start, and he starts going through my original, and it wasn't an N244, it's an IAA form. So when you're in insolvency, it's basically Insolvency Application Act form. So everything has to go on a different form. And so he starts going through that. And it's obvious because I haven't looked at that form in months, stupidly. But the arguments back then are different to what the arguments are today. And he did acknowledge that. He did say your skeleton argument seems to be different to your original form. He said there is some overlap. He says, but we'll get to that. So anyway, so his intention was to go through point by point all of these original reasons. Probably because he wanted to trip me up, because he knew exactly that this skeleton argument was different. And he's just like, where's this girl going with all of this sort of thing? So we're going through it all and I'm sinking. Right, there's stuff I am not prepared for. It's different to what I'd been working on. Um, and I'm just like, I wanted the ground to chew me up, really. Um, and then we got to point four. And we stopped for lunch. What the fuck's sake? So we had to stop for an hour. And then we came back in. And to be fair to him, right? Because he was talking to me like I was a school kid, which Mick didn't like. But I'm like, do you know what? I don't care, because he slowed things down, he enunciated, he repeated, and he gave me space and time to
To
consider my
think.
answers, right? So I was quite cool with all of that. he couldn't represent me, the guy that would come to represent me. So I was on my own. And at one point, he was asking me a question that I put on there, and I couldn't. He said, "Do you need some time to go away and consider this before you come back?" Because I'd basically, I think I'd said that they'd acted fraudulently. Um, so I said, "Yeah, I appreciate that." So we went out, and I was able to find something that would match up with what he was asking me for. So that was one thing. Whenever I said something to his questions that he thought carried weight, he would tell me that carries weight. He would write it down. He was very, very thorough. And then if he thought I was just whitewashing or bullshitting or whatever, he would just be like, no, no, that's not. Anyway, then we got to point four, I think it was. And he said, now, this is a very, very serious accusation. You have put on your form that Judge lied on the court order. And I'm looking at him, and he said, now you need to think very seriously before answering this. And I was like, okay. And I'm thinking, because obviously, like I said, I hadn't even looked at this bloody form for months. Um, he said, so I need you to answer and I need you to be straight. It's either a yes or a no, basically. And however I answered it the first time, he wasn't happy with that. So he repeated. And I'm sat there and I'm just looking at the judge, and I've explained this to other people, and I've had this happen to me before. It was like it's like a divine orchestration. You're not aware of anything else around you. I'm in this tunnel vision looking at this judge. I can't feel the guy next to me apparently nudging me, and writing no on his pad. I can't hear Mick behind me going, no. All I can see is the judge, and I'm going through my mind why I put what I put, and I'm thinking, yeah, he did fucking lie. So he asked me again, and I went, yes. Right, that's it. Proceedings stopped. Blah blah blah. Right now, and he got very animated, and he was basically saying to the barrister for the council, right, so now we're going to have to, Miss Clarke is going to have to do a witness statement with a statement of truth, detail, and we need to be clear, Miss Clarke. You need to detail every single point, and be clear and not evasive, and this, that, and the other. The barrister next to me, she's going, and he's going, is that okay? Is that okay? And she's going, yes, yes, but well, I think we could carry on going through, this form, because she knew I was flailing. And no, there's no point, because if it is found that the judge did lie, then obviously all of this is irrelevant. Yes, of course, Judge. Yes, of course. And so basically that's what happened. So it got stopped. I was instructed to do a witness statement. And when we left, I was just relieved to get out of there, because I knew I was struggling. And we got out, and my guy and Mick is looking at me very, very seriously. And I'm like, what? Do you know how serious it is accusing a judge of lying? I went, it's a prisonable offence. I'm like, what? If you're found to have been lying or,
I
whatever.
suppose it would kind of like libelous, wouldn't it? You're slandering somebody. If
Yeah,
it's found to
exactly.
be non-true, then
Exactly, yeah. So, so I was like, right, okay. Anyway, then we went and got a drink and had a talk, and I'm not going to say what came up in that conversation, but it was like, right. Maybe I've fallen into somebody else's agenda, because I tell you what, that judge who was adamant that he was going to settle this once and for all on that day, to all of a sudden stop proceedings and get all animated, it was like, is there another agenda here? But I won't digress on that. So since then, basically, that was early February, I'd been trying to get the court transcript from back in August, because obviously I was never in the court. First, the court just ignored me for 2 weeks because I'd been given 3 weeks to do this statement. The judge the court ignored my request for 2 weeks, and then I found out that the person that deals with the transcripts had been on holiday for 2 weeks. Nobody picked up the emails in her absence. So I had to put in a request for an extension, which he agreed to. So I was given another 4 week extension. Then the court sent because when you ask for a transcript, the court sends it to a third party to transcribe it. I have to pay for the privilege to get that transcript. And if it's from a judge that's created an order from that hearing, it then goes back to the judge for him to authorize and go through before it gets sent to me. You can see how that might be a little biased. Anyway, so the first CD that they sent to the agency was the wrong hearing, apparently.
So that's smack my bitch up.
And it was like, so I'd had to keep chasing and chasing, and I spoke to the third party, and then I went back to the court, and the court said, "Oh, sorry, I only sent one of the CDs, the afternoon hearing, didn't send the other one," and I'm going, "What other one?" So I'm then messaging saying, "What other hearing? There was no hearing in the afternoon." And then I'm thinking, what's going on? Did something happen again in my absence, and all of this sort of thing. Then they sent another CD, which was corrupted. So I had to put in another request for an extension, which I got. And then the debacle continued. This went on for weeks and weeks and weeks. And when I put in the third request for an extension, the judge requested that it be an in-person hearing. Now, nothing had changed. He'd seen all the evidence of the emails where it's obvious that Mel's still not received this transcript. And it's obvious that the court keep fucking up, basically. So then you're thinking, this is corruption at the highest level. They're trying to sabotage this. They're trying to do whatever. And unfortunately, because I hadn't served the other side solicitor in terms of that third extension, they found out quite late, messaged me, and I was like, "Oh, sorry, I forgot to serve you." They didn't want to do an in-person hearing because it meant sending the barrister up from London. I didn't want to do it because we knew the judge was just going to say, "Yeah, that's fine." They agreed. They basically suggested, let's not do another 4 weeks. Let's do 8 weeks because we know how problematic it is getting these transcripts. And so we tried to get all of that done to stop the hearing. And of course, courts couldn't give a crap. Judge hasn't seen it. We all have to rock up on the Friday morning to be told, "Oh, the judge is rubber stamped it, no hearing, you've got your 8 week extension." Meanwhile, the barristers come up from London, got up at 5 o'clock in the morning, probably charged out 500 plus quid for the day, which will get added onto my costs if I lose. Yeah. So that's basically, and then anyway, about 2 weeks after that, I finally got no, not 2 weeks, probably about 4 weeks after that, I finally got the transcript. 5 minutes long. So the debacle had started when we got there, just before 11 o'clock. Obviously, my guy had been into court a couple of times, come out. There was conversations between me and the usher, blah, blah, blah. But none of that's been recorded. It's just been from 11:18 to 11:23, which was clearly when the judge decided to start proceedings after my guy had been assaulted, punched, and thrown out of the building, where he just said to the council's third party, "Yes, yes, bankrupt, yes," pretty much. It is quite funny. I saw at the end of the transcript. I dare say we haven't heard the end of this, which is what the judge said. So I've now gone back and I've sent a letter of complaint to the judge, not the corrupt judge, the other judge, to say, "I'm sorry. We need all of the information, not just the 5 minutes where the judge decides to do his own thing." We'll see. They'll turn around to me and say, "Well, it didn't officially start. It doesn't get recorded until it officially starts, blah, blah, blah." They'll say all of that sort of stuff, I'm sure. So yeah, so I've now got another just under 2 weeks to get that witness statement in, at which point it will be given to the offending judge for his response. And then I'm not sure what happens, but if it's found, I don't know who's going to judge whether his response is true or false or whatever. I don't know how all that's going to play out, whether it's going to actually be another hearing. So the judge will come with his response, whether he denies or whether he can't deny it because I've got witness statements that proves he lied. Um, so yeah, that's all to play out.
It's insane. It's
That,
mental, isn't
that's
it?
been the last 12 months of my freaking
Well,
life.
fair play to you for going through all that, because I know a lot of people would probably have buckled way before now.
But you know what,
I don't
though?
even know whether I would how I would cope.
It's been stressful at times, and I've got other stuff going on. That's just one part of it. I'm not going to talk about the other stuff just yet, but I've always been called a bit of a warrior, um, courageous, brave, whatever. I think, my top core value is honesty. My second is authenticity. I cannot stand bullshit and I can't stand liars. And the more you get into this and the more are forced into having to do this stuff to protect yourself, the more you realize just how fraudulent the whole thing is. Forget hiring the room in the magistrates court. The county courts or administration courts, which are all fraudulent, they have no lawful standing against the people. We're all corporations. We've been lied to, duped into our birth certificates. We are now dead entities. We're now corporations. That's how they're getting away with this shit. How
Hmm.
can a whole council bankrupt me? There is no one person that's been and bankrupted me. It's a corporation versus a corporation. And this is what we're trying to get across. And there's more and more people, and there
And
definitely
it
is.
all comes down to contract law. So where's the contract?
Well, yeah, if you want me to be a corporation, then where's my contract? And I did say that in the hearing in early February. He said, "So, Miss Clarke, you believe then that everybody should sign a contract for council tax, if that's the case?" Because I was talking about, all councils are corporations, they've got their DUNS numbers.
And also, aren't most councils around in England bankrupt anyway? So why would you be paying a
A
bankrupt
bankrupt
com
organization. Yeah,
when
exactly.
it's illegal to pay someone who's bankrupt?
But we also know, Chris, that the whole world has been in bankruptcy since 1930 and it's all managed by the IRS. So the whole thing, we're just playing in a debt system.
Hmm.
That's how they can keep getting away with it because everybody's bankrupt anyway. So yeah. So
It's incredible.
it
It,
is
it,
incredible.
it's yeah, it's an interesting time to be alive. Not necessarily a fun one. Interesting, but yeah. Right. Well, before we wrap up, let's have a quick talk about the Never Settle podcast and how that all came about, because
Yeah.
it's been looking at me in the face all this time.
Yeah.
So come on, how did this
So,
happen? What made you start this journey?
okay. So, in 2020, I got made redundant, like a lot of people with the whole pandemic. And I'd already been into marketing, online marketing. I've always been one of these people that have tried to find other ways to make money, to get rid of the rat race and all that sort of stuff. So I've done shed loads of self-development, shed loads of property courses, online marketing courses, you name it. And when I got involved with a company called SFM back in 2017, it's all about producing content. So in and creating a brand. So in 2020, when I was made redundant, I decided I'm going to start a podcast because it'll just give me loads of content that I can reference for my new business that I really want to do, which is my coaching. So I'm a sole purpose coach, call it life coach, call it what you want, but basically helping people to stop settling in their life, whether that be relationships, career, or whatever. So that's how it started. And so I was getting on, what I called extraordinary, ordinary people to talk about their life and when it was that they decided to stop settling and what they do now, etc.
Mm.
And so I had great fun doing all of that. And with the whole awareness of everything that was going on, and then obviously watching the likes of Richard Vobes and yourself and this, that, and the other. And there was part of me that was just like, oh, I'd love to, it just feels more, more authentic to be talking about the bigger picture, which isn't now about coaching individual people. It's about the crap that's going on in the world. And once that's in your heart and soul, it's really hard to see beyond that.
Mm.
So it was obvious to me I was trying to build this coaching business and going through some trauma myself at the hands of an ex, which really slowed things down for me. Um, and then meeting, these people last year, the Sovereign Project, um, various other people I've met along the way as well that have helped me, and seeing how difficult it is and the censorship and taking down videos and being strikes on YouTube, which I've now experienced and all that sort of stuff. I just thought this is really where it's at. I've been avoiding it because I didn't want to get into the darkness, if you like. I want to be looking at love and light.
Mm.
But it just got to a point where I just couldn't. And then I think I
Well, at
can't
the end
remember.
of the day, love and light will only ever really come into play once you've shone light onto the darkness.
Yeah. Yeah, and Rachel Alno said something very similar when she came on. She's the ex Dragon's Den, who's been going through the common law stuff herself. Um, so yeah, so I can't remember who the actual first truther guest was now. I should have looked before we came on, but I went for it. Then I had another one. Then I had another one. Then I got Matt Letizia on, who's an absolute dude, and obviously that was really really popular. Although that got took down.
Do you know
Um,
what? That's the only reason why I haven't really reached out, because there's certain people that I would love to have on the show, but because I know YouTube are such wankers that it makes it almost impossible. I know I could do it for Rumble, but the
of
views on
course you
there
could.
is just not, you know, YouTube Rumble. But no, that is something that I could do, I guess.
Well,
But
all I
yeah,
did, all I did, Chris, with that one, because there was only a couple of bits where the V got mentioned. So I just snipped them out, put it back, re-uploaded it, and it's still there now.
no,
Um,
that's not so bad
and
then.
maybe it's just a case of, look, can we not say that word? But
See, and
obviously,
now that's I don't even know whether YouTube's quite as bad now because it's so out there in the mainstream now, and they're talking about it in the mainstream. I don't know whether
yes, they are.
if are they still.
Yeah, well, I've just had a strike, and Steve Forsyth's been taken down, um, purely for that.
Right, okay.
So that what I've done now with that, I've just put up a little snippet like what you do. And there's been over 1,000 on Rumble already for
Well,
Steve.
that's good.
So it does work. So yeah, they are still doing it, but then you've got the likes of Dr. John Campbell, who's talking about it all day, every day, and talking about the side effects and the adverse reactions and the deaths and this, that, and the other. But somehow, with 3 million subscribers, he's not being affected.
It does make you wonder, doesn't it?
It does make you wonder.
I mean, other than the conspiratorial as to why he might be getting away with it, the only other way that I can think of is that because he's always referencing established papers and he's always got a he's not just somebody's talking
Yeah, yeah.
spill. He's showing, look, here's the evidence, this is from that website, here it is in black and white. So I don't know whether YouTube would actually be able to as much because it's not, you're not
Yeah, he's
just giving your
referencing
opinion,
official.
you're
Yeah,
stating, look, it's here.
yeah,
So
yeah.
maybe
Yeah,
that's
you
why.
might have a point. You might have a point. So yeah, so that's how it started really. And it was a bit like dipping my toe in and not being sure and all the rest of it. However, that's what I do now. Other than I like getting plant medicine people on, and
Mm.
I want to get more channelers on. I don't know if you're into Alex Ferrari's Next Level Soul podcast.
No,
It's
but that,
all near death experiences, channelers, all that sort of
yeah,
stuff.
so that always fascinates me. When I used to work with my headphones in, I would always be listening to like near death accounts. Like you've got that near death radio station, and yeah, loads of near death experiences. I used to love listening to things about ayahuasca and all that
Yeah.
yeah, I've done DMT.
I've
In
done
the
ayahuasca
oh,
and
so I haven't done I haven't drunk it
yeah.
because I don't like the idea of pooing and puking, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
And it just seems like it's really in depth. You know, you're in it. At least when you smoke it, after 10 minutes, you're back in the room like nothing's happened. You're like, oh,
Yeah, it's quite an experience. I remember
mm.
a friend of mine saying, "And you paid for that?" And I'm
Oh, did
like,
you go to Peru?
"No, I didn't. I went
Oh,
to Leeds."
oh, really? Oh, okay, cool. I didn't know. I
Well,
didn't
you
know you were
can't.
able
You
to do
can't.
all of this.
It was Leeds, Australia. I'm
Right,
joking, but
okay.
obviously it's illegal over here, isn't it? So
Well, yes and no. I don't know whether that has the same, like in America, I know that there are churches which do that, and because it's their religion, they're allowed to do it. And so I don't know whether there's a similar thing in this country. Probably not, because we're all fucking stuck in the Middle Ages. And
yeah,
if not, that's certainly where they're trying to send us.
I don't.
But
Yeah, I don't think there is, mate. So yeah.
no, there isn't. Well, listen, thank you very much for your time today. I've really enjoyed having a chat with you. I say chat, I've really enjoyed listening to you. Um, yeah, it's been fantastic. And kudos for everything that you've been doing, putting your money where your mouth is, showing people
Can I
what to
just
do.
give a
Yeah.
bit of a shout out before I go? What I didn't get on to say was I've recently joined an authority called the World Martial Authority.
Hmm.
Now they have leaned the whole world because the whole world's in bankruptcy anyway. The whole fiat system is fraud, etc., etc. They are the only organization, or not organization, authority that have got lawful money, which is called the Turon, and they can basically settle any alleged debts if they wanted to. But they are also the world's most authoritarian martial. Well, I can't think of the words, but basically the idea is when everything's put in place, they will be dealing with common law courts, they will be arresting judges and corrupt people, and they will be getting rid of the corruption in the world.
So it sounds a bit like white hats.
Well, we can't wait for invisible white hats to come and save us. These guys are on the ground. Um, they basically have been doing this a long time. And there's a guy called General Belton who basically leaned the whole world and has all the alloidial land titles. So the Turon is backed by alloidial land. It's not just airy fairy fiat crap, and it's nothing to do with fiat. And
Or
so I
gold.
just and there's gold as well. But at the end of the day, gold is only valued on fiat. What is gold? What is the value of gold? You can only give
Well,
a
I
value
think,
of gold based on the fiat, right?
well, I don't know. Isn't gold valuable because it's a really good conductor? It's used in medical, isn't it? Isn't it more to do with what you can do with gold as to why it's so
Yeah.
valuable?
And absolutely, it comes out of the ground and all the rest of it. But what is the actual value? And I was saying things like, well, it's what somebody's worth paying for it, and what somebody's prepared to pay for it and stuff like that. But no, if you've got no fiat system, because we're all used to paying in pounds or dollars or whatever, if that all went, well, it's a lump of
Then it,
metal
yeah,
that's good for certain things.
then you just have to pay for it on benefit worth, don't you? Like
What?
on benefit worth, like I don't know, like almost like bartering.
Yeah, okay.
So it'd be all right. Give me that, and I'll do that. In fact, I want to get somebody on the channel who I might have mentioned this on your show, where they've arranged this, organized this system. So like I could go and play a gig for somebody, and that's 3 hours of my time. So I've now got 3 hours of service in the bank. So if I need somebody to come out and fix my plumbing,
Yeah.
I've got 3 hours of money where that's okay. So I still have to pay for the parts, but the actual labor of that being done would be taken out of the banked hours that I've done. Do you know what I mean? So
Is
yeah,
that is that Covlets?
is that
Covlets.
Covlets?
Yeah, we've got something similar where people are exchanging goods, basically.
Oh, okay. I don't know what it's called. This is just a conversation that I picked up on one of our stand in the park Sunday.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But no, it
It's
sounds really interesting, and it's
yeah,
quite a
it
lot of
is.
people.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, there is. Um, okay, cool. And then just before I go, you didn't ask me about my music, but
Your music, yes. Come
Melody,
on.
I did an album recently, everyone. The artist is Melody Kate, 2 words, and the album is Timelines and Ties. And I'm very proud of it. It's pop rock, and the one of the songs is 30 years old that we never recorded back in the day, right up to the present day. So just getting a plug
That's
in there.
brilliant. And leave links. send me the links, and I'll leave any links that you want in the video description so people can just click. But for now, look after yourselves. Take care. Thank you very much, Mel. It's been great talking to you. And until next time, bye for now.